our international speech contest participant, and speech entitled Stand. Let's welcome Jim Rogers.
Hey, Doofus, did you forget to bring your brain to camp? Hey, Doofus, is Gomer Pyle your dad? It was the first day of summer camp. My buddy Mark and I stumbled across some boys bullying another camper. I jumped in. Hey, Doofus, you're a doofus! Zing! He had braces. He had bad haircut. He had thick black eyeglasses. Heck, that could have been a description of me back then. Except that, oddly, he laughed like Scooby-Doo. The next morning at breakfast, he sat alone. Hey, Mark, check out Doofus. Then I watched in shock as my buddy Mark picked up his tray and went over and sat with him. What's he doing, sitting with Doofus? About 10 minutes later, I hear, and Mark was laughing too. Maybe he wasn't such a doofus after all. So I got up and joined him. At lunchtime, other boys joined him. And by dinner time, no one was calling him doofus anymore. My friend Mark changed the boys' summer camp experience because he showed conviction, courage, compassion. Mr. Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, and anyone who's ever known a doofus, or been one, I didn't grasp the power of what Mark did until years later when my grandpa died, and I heard this story. Grandpa, folks called him Jimmy, lived in a small tobacco town in North Carolina. As a young man, Grandpa mangled his knee in an accident that left him with a severe limp for the rest of his life. When Grandpa was about my age, on a sweltering summer Saturday night in 1950, a motorcade with 30 vehicles carrying robed men in white robes, snaked through town, and these were not good guys. In the backs of their trucks were axe handles and shotguns. They cloaked their faces behind hoods. They ended up downtown where they held a recruitment rally right on the town square in an act of intimidation. Now, Grandpa owned a country store right outside of town, so the next Saturday night at closing time, a friend, a black friend and customer, walked into the store and said, "Mr. Jimmy, folks are scared to go downtown tonight, even though the Klan's not going to be around in these parts. It just ain't fair." My grandpa scratched his head as he always did when he was thinking, pushed his cap up a little bit, and said, "Virgil, hop in the truck." Grandpa went to his truck after he locked the store and he climbed in, and he and Virgil drove around the countryside and gathered up black neighbors and friends, and he drove them downtown so they could enjoy Saturday night out. On Monday, Grandpa sat out in front of his store. Two trucks skidded in to the store, into the front of the store, spraying gravel up as they came in. A local farmer that he knew sat down next to him. "Jimmy, you're a right nice fella. I just figured I ought to tell you, you driving them folks downtown last Saturday night, got some folks pretty riled up around here." "What folks?" those cowards with sheets over their heads. You ought to watch what you're saying. You never know who you might be talking to. My grandpa eyed the other men in the truck that he didn't know, and the axe handle was poking out of the back. Took measure of the situation. Get the hell off my property! And the men sprayed gravel again as they left. My grandpa may have had a limp, but he was no cripple, because he had conviction, courage, and compassion. He cast aside doubt, fear, and indifference. Intimidation and exclusion happen just as much today as they did 60 years ago, or perhaps throughout all of time. Power may shift, the targets and tactics may change. It might be more subtle, but it is the perpetual plague of mankind. And we learn it early in life. Can you think of someone who always eats alone? Or a group of people who are being kept down in some way? Will you let them sit on the sidelines of society, or will you stand up for them? Can you overcome doubt, fear, and indifference? Or will you be crippled by them? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." Speak up for them. Stand for them. Love them. Just as Mark sat with Doofus, that is Kevin, or just as my grandpa sat in that truck with Virgil, you don't even need to stand. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. At this time, I'll ask our Mr. Dwayne Buckles, our timer, to provide 1 minute so we can provide feedback for Mr. Rogers' speech.
One minute.
Continuing with our program this morning, one of the parts and portions of our meeting that I really get excited about is table topics, especially since I'm Postmaster